Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome. My name is John Coonrod. I'm the chair of Sarvodaya USA. And all of you are here because somehow or other, the great Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne has inspired your life. And he has certainly inspired my life. He's pretty much everything I've ever done since meeting Ari has been influenced by Ari. I've tried to bring his philosophy to every organization that I've worked in. And and I know all of you are doing that in different ways. You know, we're living at a time of polycrisis with climate and conflict and poverty and inequality and injustice. Yet anyone who has met Ari knows that addressing those challenges is possible. And that in fact, participating in ending those challenges could bring real meaning and fulfillment to our lives. So, you know, when I was privileged to be at the funeral of Ari, I realized that he had really passed his torch to us. He had taken the torch from Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi had learned community development from Trappist monks. So this is a relay race, step by step towards a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. And Ari has passed that torch to us. So we're going to start today's session with a small ceremony of lighting a lamp. I don't know if we can swing the camera around there, Bob. Mr. Ambassador, if you could join us. And next, I would like to invite the distinguished Venerable Upatarana to say some important words.
Good afternoon, friends. Now, according to Buddhist tradition, we take a precept and before the start the ceremony. Say Namo Tassa 3 times, please. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma. Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Sangham Saranang Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Sangham Saranang Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Sangham Saranang Gacchāmi. Pānātipātā Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyāmi. Adinādāna Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyāmi. කාමේසු මිච්ඡාචාරා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි. මුසාවාදා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි. සුරාමේරය මජ්ජපමා දට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි. Please seated. So late Mr. Dr. Ariyaratne, and according to the Buddhist teaching, I recite special stanzas. Just අනිච්චාවත සංඛාරා උපාද වය ධම්මිනෝ uppajjitva niruddhanti te samupasamo sukho අනිච්චාවත සංඛාරා උපාද වය ධම්මිනෝ uppajjitva niruddhanti te සංවූප සමෝ සුඛෝ අනිච්චාවත සංඛාරා උපාද වය ධම්මිනෝ uppajjitva niruddhanti te samupasamo sukho. Impermanent are all conditions, things affected by rising and falling away. Having arisen, they then must cease. Blissful is it when this subject subside. So, Dr. Ariyaratne, while I'm in Sri Lanka, I get associate him his some training program for the monks in the Moratua, Medura. This is a kind of a place I went to when I was high school. I went over there training, and for the Sunday school teachers and teaching center over there. And this kind of facilities, training for the teachers or like that, very rare in Sri Lanka those days. I don't know, maybe now it's more. And that is a wonderful thing. And they provided, when they are talking, I was so happy to hear that they always, rather than with the name, with the brother or sister, uncle or auntie or something like the specific relationship they talk, and they talk into their real heart. And that's the way their community they are built up, Sarvodaya community. And the presentation, that things very well, very attractive, and that's why I like that thing. So, and I want to talk about him. And even though when I was in Washington early 80, several times I met him with the Washington Buddhist Vihara, and he's remarkable. His family is remarkable. Anya and his sister and everybody doing, continuing. There's a great social work and appreciate and wish them that family also success. And I believe that we all have gathered to here to fulfill a great duty today by commemorating on unforgettable leader of our society, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne, who was the founder, the father of Sarvodaya movement in Sri Lanka. The term Sarvodaya illustrate means, literally mean the rise of everything, means the rise of not only material but also spiritual development. His vision and mission focus on the rise of the entire society, starting from one's own family. His project were based on Mahatma Gandhi's principle of nonviolence and the Buddha's teaching of sublime quality Brahmavihara. If Dr. Ariyaratne were present here alive, he would ask us whether we understand the true meaning of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. It is not only loving kindness that he wants us to understand, but loving kindness in action. In the same manner, compassion in action, sympathetic joy in action, and equanimity in action were more meaningful and practically useful in our life, according to him. Laying emphasis on these sublime qualities, he set examples by following the Buddha's teaching, such as that it is not by birth but by action that one became either superior or inferior. His mission of action, his service were always rendered beyond classes, caste, or creed. creed. We, the members of the Buddhist followers, feel that we miss him immensely. However, we accept the fact that everything is on changing nature. The fruit of tree may fall down at any stage. The candle that we light will be out after a while. Such is our life. However, let us now reflect on our deepest uh, reliefs and friends, great services and good qualities, and make them alive in our hearts. Let us also concentrate our wholesome thought and wish Dr. Ariyaratne peace, harmony, and happiness in whichever form of life that he is uh, presently continuing with. Uh, Transferring merit to him, let us now recite it. Idamme ñātīnaṁ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Idamme ñātīnaṁ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Idamme ñātīnaṁ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Let this merit go to our relatives. May our relatives be happy and well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I want to thank at this point the AGU and Emily and Bob in particular for hosting us so beautifully in this facility. And Bob, the next thing we'd like to do is to play the short news video from Sri Lanka News about Ari and the full state honors he received in Sri Lanka, and then we'll hear from the ambassador. So, Bob?
Founder of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne passed away on April 16th while receiving treatment at a private hospital in Colombo. He was 92 years of age at the time of his demise. Born on the 5th of November 1931 in Unawatuna, Gaul, A.T. Ariyaratne was educated in Mahinda College, Gaul. He is also a proud alumnus of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. The Sarvodaya movement, founded by him in 1958 on a robust strategy, has gained much adulation of masses over the years. His profound contribution to Sri Lanka and its people in developing the lives of the masses serves and will continue to serve as a prime example to many. The Ramon Magsaysay Award for Community Leadership, Bowdoin Award for International Development, and the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Prize are only a handful of international accolades the late Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne was awarded for his spiritually based people development approach and distinguished service to the nation. He was conferred with the Sri Lak Abhimanya Award, Sri Lanka's highest civil honor, in 2007. The late Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne's mortal remains were placed at the Sarvodaya headquarters in Moratuwa from the 17th of April till 1 p.m. today for the public to pay their last respects. The funeral rites commenced at 10 this morning, with multi-religious observances being held. Thereafter, the cortege, followed by a special vehicular procession, travelled from the Sarvodaya headquarters to the Independence Square with full state honours. The cremation of Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne, a true Sri Lankan icon, took place at the premises of the Independence Square in Colombo, amidst the sorrowful tears of many present at the occasion, including the Mahasangha, representatives of NGOs and relatives of Dr. Ariyaratne.
Thank you. It was such a privilege to be here, and I'm really thankful that they made this clip for us to be able to see. Now it's my honor to introduce Sri Lanka's ambassador to the United States for his reflections. Mr. Ambassador.
Chief Incumbent of the Maryland Buddhist Vihare, also the Chief Judicial Monk of North America, Venerable Uparatana, Vinya, John, members of the family, other distinguished participants at this very solemn occasion. We are here today to acknowledge and honor and celebrate the life services of a great humanitarian, son of Sri Lanka, a gentleman who devoted his life to protecting and promoting democracy, the rule of law, human rights, reconciliation, sustainable development, Sri Lanka, the environment. There's so many things that the world needs that Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne stood for and was very passionate about. I got to know him very closely, in fact, when I was Sri Lanka's first and only human rights minister. We worked closely during the war and in the aftermath of the war as the then president's special envoy on human rights. We continued to work together. he was a favorite among the diplomatic community in Sri Lanka. Whenever I used to go for these diplomatic receptions or a national day, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne was always there, not alone, but with his lovely wife. It was always the two of them together. And whenever I used to see him, I used to do one beeline towards him because I benefited so much by talking to him. Of course, given my portfolio, it was always about humanitarian supplies, needing to go to the north and the east, the former theaters of conflict, his advice on how we should work with civil society groups in Sri Lanka. I personally benefited a great deal on the interactions that I had with him. And subsequently, when I was preparing Sri Lanka's first time-bound national action plan on human rights, he sent Vinya for the civil society meetings that I used to have regularly at the ministry. Vinya, of course, at that time didn't have the gray hair that he has now. He was young and very enthusiastic and contributed substantively to the work that we were doing. I can remember when I presented the two Universal Periodic Review reports in Geneva, Vinya participated in all the meetings that I had with civil society groups because I wanted to see a buy-in from civil society. And Sarvodaya was represented very effectively, substantively by Vinya. Vinya, of course, as you know, the doctor of medicine. He continues his interest in that respect, but of course, he has learned from the great man, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne. And in fact, he looks like him so much. When I came into this room, I thought I was seeing Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne. So really, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne gave leadership to so many Sri Lankans. What I really observed when I saw Sarvodaya movements all over Sri Lanka at the grassroots level, Sarvodaya meetings that were held, the work that Sarvodaya followers were doing at the grassroots level. What I really saw was that it was always apolitical. Dr. Ariyaratne himself, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne himself was apolitical. He never discussed politics. He was not really interested in politics, interested in the upliftment of human beings. He was interested in peace. He was interested in reconciliation. Those were his pet subjects that he championed all the time. And I always felt that the Sarvodaya movement's success and sustainability was as a result of not bringing in politics to that movement. In my 35 years of public life, I worked constantly at the grassroots level. And the members who came together with the movement were from different shades of political backgrounds. They had their political beliefs. But when they came in and sat together, there was never politics on the table. It was always on how we could help people, we could develop the village, and how we can build amity, reconciliation amongst the different ethnic groups in Sri Lanka. Dr. Ariyaratne always believed in protecting and nurturing the multiculturalism the multilingualism in Sri Lanka, the multi-religious fabric of Sri Lanka, the multi-ethnicity, because he always believed that this diversity was the greatest source of strength of Sri Lanka. He really truly believed in that. This is why we always had these synergies that we could easily establish. And I really benefited in my personal life as well, listening to him and, of course, seeking his advice whenever I could in discharging my responsibilities on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka. So I know there are other speakers, so I will stop at that. But in conclusion, Dr. Ariyaratne was also a great believer and follower of Mahatma Gandhi. And I thought I'll end my speech with a quote from the Mahatma himself. I read this book actually of his book called An Experiment with Plain Truth. And in that book, he says, and I quote, "I have nothing new to teach the world. Truth and nonviolence is as old as hills." Unquote. I think that also epitomizes Dr. Ariyaratne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We want to hear from someone on the Zoom. I cannot tell, unfortunately, on the Zoom if the UN mission of Sri Lanka is on. If you are on, I'll pause for a moment and you can unmute and speak up. I didn't see them join. Okay, so instead, I want to reach out to another person on Zoom, Vikat Bodhi. If you could unmute and speak to us. Yeah. Vikat Bodhi. Pushing that little button that says ask to unmute. Yes, please go ahead, Vikat.
Yeah, I am here. Yeah.
Please, do you have a reflection you would like to share?
Okay, am I visible?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a great honor to be invited rather unexpectedly, since I thought I would have been invisible on Zoom. I didn't know Dr. Ariyaratne well personally, but I found him to be a highly inspiring figure. And I actually had met him only one time in Sri Lanka when I was living in the Forest Hermitage. Is my voice coming through?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, when I was living in the Forest Hermitage with Venerable Nyanaponika, but I met him twice here in the United States. One time was actually in Washington, D.C. It was in the year 2010. I had been invited at that time, a couple of years earlier, together with some of my students. We had founded a Buddhist relief organization called Buddhist Global Relief. And there was a conference being held at the Johns Hopkins University with a symposium on religiously inspired relief work. And so as the founder of Buddhist Global Relief, I had been invited to that conference or that symposium. And while I was there, somebody told me that Dr. Ariyaratne is now in Washington. And he asked, would you like to go to see him? And I said, certainly. And so after the symposium, we took somebody drove us to meet Dr. Ariyaratne, who was giving a talk at another center about the situation in Sri Lanka following the the ending of the ethnically rooted civil war. And so we had a little conversation, some photographs were taken. And just when Krishna invited me to come to this function in Washington, he sent me copies. He had the photos. I think he was the one who took the photos. And the second time that I met Dr. Ariyaratne was on the other side of the country in Los Angeles. It could have been in the year 2014. I had been in Los Angeles and I was invited to give a talk at the University of the West. That's a university outside of Washington, outside of Los Angeles. And I gave my talk on the interpretation of Buddhist scriptures. And just as I was giving my talk, the door of the room opened and in walks the Venerable Walpala Piyananda, the founder of the Dhamma Vicaya Vihara in Los Angeles, together with Dr. Ariyaratne. And so when I finished my talk, I told the audience that we have here one of the greatest sort of social philosophers, Buddhist social philosophers of Sri Lanka, who's just entered the room right now. And I invited him to come up and give a talk. And he gave an excellent little talk, perhaps about a half an hour, in which he summarized the whole philosophy of Sarvodaya. And I found this very impressive because it corresponds very much to the philosophy that underlies the work of my organization, Buddhist Global Relief, which is the foundation point is not, when providing relief work, not to make people dependent upon you, but to provide them with the means to become self-sufficient. And Dr. Ariyaratne presented in that talk a very broad philosophy in which he showed the different levels of development that Sarvodaya tries to encourage, beginning with material development, economic development, but also promoting social harmony, promoting cultural harmony, and then converging at the top at spiritual cultivation. Yeah, so this will be just some of my thoughts, my recollections of Dr. Ariyaratne. I didn't expect to be called to give a talk, and so I didn't prepare any formal comments, but I hope that this will provide some insight into some of the work of Dr. Ariyaratne and his vision.
Thank you very, very much. So now I'd like to turn to this room. I wrote to actually a couple thousand people, inviting them and suggesting that if they have reflections to try to figure out how to do it in about 2 minutes. So really, I'd like to call on anyone here. And if you don't raise your hand, I will call on you. Yes, please come up here. And please introduce yourself also.
I am Suman Ratnaik. I was a senior lecturer at the University of Peradeniya in Buddhist studies, Pali and Buddhist studies. I used to be a close friend of Dr. Ariyaratne, so I cannot be silent here. I had to stand. I felt. His daughter, Dr. Charika Marasinghe, studied at Oxford University. During her studies, I was a student of Oxford University as well. So I was the president of Oxford University Buddhist Society for 2 years. During that time, we invited Dr. Ariyaratne to address a gathering there at Oxford University. And he made us so impressed by his presentations on Sarvodaya movement. Not only that, but I was invited to Sarvodaya many times to participate in conferences, to also to lead some workshops. And I called, Charika, her daughter. We are very close because we were very active in Buddhist activities at Oxford University when we were there. That was in the 90s. And Dr. Vinya, I met many times, but of course, we were not close friends. But of course, I respected him as Dr. Ariyaratne's son so much. So I actually, if I start saying very much, that will be a too long talk. So I don't want to be that long in my expressions. To make it brief, I introduced one subject to our curriculum at Oxford, at Peradeniya University, that is engaged Buddhism for MA students. And there the main topic is actually Dr. Ariyaratne. When you talk about engaged Buddhism in Sri Lanka, we cannot forget Dr. Ariyaratne. So afterwards, I made a lot of researchers, a lot of students write papers on Sarvodaya movement. So we visited Sarvodaya movement several times at also local branches of Sarvodaya movement around Kandy, Peradeniya, etc. And a lot of our students wrote papers actually. They were not that popular, I mean, that published. But anyway, they were very impressed by the social activities of Sarvodaya movement, thanks to Dr. Ariyaratne. So as Ambassador also articulated quite brilliantly, Dr. Ariyaratne is a close friend of all of us, and also he's a great gentleman who rendered an excellent service to Sri Lanka. Personally, I listened to Ambassador before, online and also in his hard talks, etc. I personally got impressed by Mr. Ambassador's talks and how he answered questions in the public. So his recommendation and his appreciation of Dr. Ariyaratne, I personally am grateful to. Thank you. I mean, I know that you are not a minister now. I listen to you as a minister. As you said correctly, Dr. Ariyaratne has never been in the politics. So I'm not going to talk more about these lines. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, we're going back to the Zoom. Vinya has requested, so you can't refuse, Lawrence Simon to please share his reflections. Larry, are you there?
Yes, John. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Vinya, for putting me on the spot here, but I appreciate very much the opportunity to say a few words. I also want to acknowledge that I see on the Zoom screen that Nita Ariyaratne is watching and other members of the family, family that I have known and loved for many decades, actually. I first met Dr. Ariyaratne in the late 1970s when I joined Oxfam America, which at that time was a very important partner with Dr. Ari and the movement. And over the years, I had the pleasure of important visits to the country and to work with the Sarvodaya movement during my years with American Jewish World Service, and then under the United Nations Development Program and beyond. And I was able to actually witness not only the great promise of the movement, but its courage, especially during the war years, when there were direct threats, constant threats against Dr. Ari's life and attempts to dismantle the movement itself. So I've always seen Sarvodaya as a social movement, certainly also an NGO, but not only an NGO, more than an NGO. So I think Dr. Ari's mission was on an even higher plane than the important development and humanitarian work of the best NGOs. So Dr. Arya's vision was to transform society itself beyond any concept or common concepts of development. The awakening of the self, of the individual, all the way to the awakening of the society, of the country, and even beyond. Awakening against needless accumulation, against exploitation, against ethnic and religious division and hatreds, but for the full flourishing of human personality and its maturity in the world. That same mission is very much, I am convinced, very much alive and well in the movement today, in the leadership team headed by Dr. Vinya Ariyaratne. And I also believe it is very much alive and well in thousands of villages among those who now celebrate the life of Dr. Ariyaratne. So I look forward to many years further of close association through Dr. Vinya and Nita and others. Thank you for asking me to say a few words today. Thank you.
Larry, thank you. Another person we'd really like to hear from is one of my heroes, actually. She wrote the book, Dharma and Development, and she's on the line. So Joanna Macy, if you wouldn't mind being put on the spot, it would be wonderful to hear from you. Just unmute and speak up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, great. Oh, what a thrill it is to be able to take part in this meeting. Dr. Ariyaratne changed my life. It was a beautiful adventure deposited into, I was already in my midlife, in my 40s, and I heard about this and I read about this and I went out and to live in the villages in Sri Lanka to learn how the message of the Dharma, actually, and the awakening of all Sarvodaya was happening. And I lived in a village and worked with and was inspired by people at the very grassroots to find meaning in their lives and a meaning in hope for our world, for clarity and commitment. Yes. So blessings on you all. I'm in my mid-90s now, but the years I spent out there in the village with Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka, comes to life again as I see your faces and hear your voices. God bless us.
Thank you, Joanna. Okay, so here in the room, Rick Brooks, not only former head of Sarvodaya USA, but all those libraries that you see everywhere. He founded.
Thanks, John. Thank you all for being here. It's lovely to see you. I know your names and faces, and it's been a long time. I first heard about Sarvodaya through Joanna Macy, who had an article in the Whole Earth catalog saying, Shramadana, it could happen anywhere. It's good to happen anywhere. But it took me several years to go to Sri Lanka, and I remember it well because I was at the Temple of Buddha's Tooth when the bomb exploded about 100 yards from the Sarvodaya district headquarters. And I received a call from Nita Ariyaratne saying that Dr. Ariyaratne would be back from the Schumacher Institute in the UK, where he was teaching a course on Buddhist economics. And he was back in less than 48 hours. But what I have to say is, I've been with Ari, and he is the most transcendent example of the narrowing the distance between belief and action and living the message of his life. Gandhi said that, he said that. His life is his message. That was A.T. Ariyaratne's message. And the rest of his message is here, and it's you. It's among the first Shramadana work camp I attended, where 300 people got together and built the road and sang every night at family gatherings. And I watched 2 7-year-old girls stand up and talk about the plans that the children's group were making for the village. And they had asked, how can we build a road in our village? We've never done this before. We don't know how to do this. And the answer from the organizer from Sarvodaya was, you can do it the same way thousands of other villages have done this. And sure enough, within weeks, they started their preschool, and now there are thousands of preschools. My guess is that 1/3 or more of the people of Sri Lanka went through a Sarvodaya preschool in their village. And so they talk about not just spiritual guidance, but living the message, but also the terms that have come up: sustainability, ecology, philosophy, spirituality. I traveled with Ari after the tsunami, and to give you an idea of how to be working with people of different religions and backgrounds, in 2 days, we attended a ceremony run by a Hindu priest in the morning. We went to a Baha'i temple. In the afternoon, we went to the ceremonial laying of a stone in a Muslim housing development to recover from the tsunami. We also went to other programs sponsored by other religious organizations. And all of that day, the support for that day came from the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, which I think any of us would, as we look back, say were they one of the strongest supporters of the Sarvodaya movement after the tsunami. It was remarkable to see Sarvodaya, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne's legacy. It's hard for all of us to think about. It's easy to remember the man, the grandfather, the father, the son, the teacher, the leader, the person who does what he strongly advocates. He was not only loving, he was funny. He could take a joke. He could tell you a funny story, but he could also tell you about times in a very humble way that everyone else around him was afraid, and he was not. And you will, if you haven't already heard the stories, you should hear about them, because he is the best example of courage that I have ever known. So I just want to say to all of you, little story. He came and he stayed in my house with my wife and family and children, and came to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And many people asked me, who is that short man living in your house wearing the white skirt? And I said, Ari, what should we tell them? And his answer was characteristic A.T. Ariyaratne. It was, tell them that I am no one in particular. And I've thought about that ever since. No one in particular who has spoken to millions of people face to face personally, has flown and driven probably millions of miles and walked millions of steps and lifted millions of shovels full of soil to build roads and show them how to do it. And yet he said, I am no one in particular. Point being, so are we all, are we not? And we all have the power, if we think the way he thought and acted, to make a difference. So I love being here. I love seeing all of you. And I will never forget him. And we should not. So thank you for being here. And thanks for the chance to talk with you.
Okay, so if you are on the Zoom and you want to share a reflection, use the raise your hand feature, and because there's a lot of people in the Zoom call, that way I will see you and be able to call on you. And the same goes for this room. So if you would like to now share your reflections before I put you on the spot. Yes, Andy.
Thank you, John. And it's great to see many old friends. So I've had a few very important formative experiences in my life. And one of those experiences, perhaps the most important and most formative in many ways, was my experience in meeting Dr. Ariyaratne, knowing him, and volunteering at Sarvodaya in Sri Lanka for about a year and a half right after I graduated college. I met Dr. Ariyaratne my final year of college. A professor of mine, Ruth Morgenthau, who at the time was working with Ari, liked me, wanted to see me have a very rich formative experience. And unbeknownst to me, she conspired with Dr. Ariyaratne to have me go to Sri Lanka. How? She asked me if I would drive him around Boston and help him get to various meetings, which of course I agreed to do. By the end of his stay, he had invited me. I graduated in June, and on October, I got on a plane and I went to Sri Lanka. The experience was formative in a multitude of ways. The most important, and this reflects what others here have been saying as well, was Ari's deep commitment to humanity, from the poorest of individuals in the poorest of villages to the world. And that commitment was manifested through action, and others have talked about that, but you couldn't be around him without understanding the depth of that commitment, just as Rick was speaking about a few moments ago. But so I was imbued with that and have taken that away with me, and that's been a part of my life since those days in the early 1980s. But I want to share two other, maybe more personal ways in which Ari's influence has affected me and which stays with me today. I had the good fortune when I arrived in Sri Lanka that Ari asked me to travel with him around the country to various villages, to different meetings. He wanted me to get a sense of the whole and to see what Sarvodaya was all about. And rather than sitting at the headquarters, he said, no, hop in the car, come with me, I'll take you, you can see what we do. And so as a good young American, I got in the back seat of the car and I said, okay, where are we going? What are we going to do? And he said, Andy Mali, that's fine, but don't be planning all the time. Don't be thinking about the results all of the time. Be in the moment. He said, we're driving, you look outside, you can see the ocean, you can see the coconut trees. There's somebody making rope out of coir. Take it in. Be in the moment. I have to say, I'm still an American who's results oriented, but I learned something during my time with Ari about being present, being in the moment, that really transformed me and that I've taken with me to this very day. The other thing that I wanted to share was picks up on something that Rick said about Ari's sense of humor. So we would be driving for hours at a time, and he would be singing, and he would be telling jokes, and he would be laughing. And then we would go to a village that was the poorest place I'd ever seen, with the poorest children I'd ever seen. And then we do whatever we went to do, and then we would get in the car and he would sing again, and he would tell jokes again. And at some point, I just had to ask him, I said, you know, we just went to a desperately poor place, and yet you're very upbeat. You're laughing, you're telling stories. How can that be? And he said, Andy, he said, I never want you to forget this, but there's a difference between seriousness of purpose and seriousness of demeanor. I encourage you to be serious of purpose, but you do not need to be serious of demeanor. And in some ways, of many, many lessons that I had from being with Ari, this was the most important one, because I've spent my life working in development and in very many difficult situations, in adversity, not the sort of adversity Ari had experienced, but still, this distinction between seriousness of purpose and seriousness of demeanor helped me get through very many situations that otherwise would have been difficult or impossible to get through. As many of my friends here know, I went on after a little more education. I finished 1.5 years volunteering at Sarvodaya. I went back to school, and then I ended up spending almost 30 years working at the World Bank, which Ari was not happy about. So I don't know if he's listening somewhere, but I want to assure him that all throughout those years, that spirit of Sarvodaya, although I was working at a very different level than he was working at, that spirit of Sarvodaya, the commitment to loving kindness, the commitment to people from poorest and beyond, that stayed with me. And I brought that to the work that I did. And I can't prove it, but I hope that in some way that transformed the people around me and the work that I did, and maybe some small corner of the World Bank. Anyway, I really appreciate this opportunity to be here with all of you today and to share in Ari's memory. Thank you.
Okay, I can attest to Andy's comments about what he brought to the World Bank. So who would like to go next? Abby.
Yes, I think that. Thank you very much. Hello to all the people that I do know here, the wonderful people. And I feel so much of my life has been filled with Sarvodaya and with the people, the Ari's family. I feel like Ari's family and my family are one family, and that's been for a long, long time. And it's been a very important thing to me. And not having a lot of time to figure out what I was going to say, I found one of his books last night. It was book 3 of his autobiography. And I sat there as if I was finding out about him for the first time. And it was, and your book too. I mean, I just loved your book. I mean, and Ari would come to my house and he would sit and then he would write about everything that happened so that you knew you were getting a first view of, and a first view of the people who loved him, and who I'm sure he's, if he could sit in the background now and talk about the people who are here now, he would be very happy. People that like Carol over there, who we've been talking to each other on the phone for probably 40, 50 years at this point. And I just have to say that I brought some pictures with me, but they weren't the ones I was looking for. Unfortunately, the ones that I was looking for were down in a storage box in where I'm living now. And I didn't get a chance to go down and get it, but I'm going to. And so that's an assignment I'm giving to myself. And I don't know whether we'll have a place that we'll be in, but just sitting here and seeing Vinya through the glass here, you look so much like your dad, particularly today. And it's so exciting to me. I was a little scared at first. And I'll put some pictures out later. They're not the best pictures, but it'll give you an idea. We did so much with Ari, and my husband Mert, who's not here now, was so much a part of it, and it was such a beautiful time of his life. And love is the only word that I can really think of for our relationship. Even down to just a few weeks ago, one of our grandchildren, who has been traveling the world, stopped off in Sri Lanka and met Ari and met Nita, who treated him like he was another one of her children. And Vinya gave him a job to do. And it was just so exciting to have the family continue. That was one of the family who had not been part of the group who saw him all the time. But I'm so thankful that Ari and family have been so much a part of our lives. I don't think it could have been any other way. I mean, the letters that we have, it was just such a loving organization, a loving, just, we were all together and always with him, and he was always with us. And it's a lifelong thing for us. So that's, if I have a chance and I can just spread a few of these things out later, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you.
Wonderful, Abby. Thank you. I've been praying for that promise for some time. So when she says pictures, and her husband Mert, when Mert turned 50, he had a 50th birthday party to raise money during the summer at their summer place. And then he had a 50th birthday party for 10 years in a row. And he raised money for Ari at one of these birthday parties. He also raised money for James Y.C. Yen, who was basically the Mahatma Gandhi of China in the 1920s. And so there are just wonderful, wonderful things that the Mason household has produced. So thank you for that. Also, thank you for plugging my book. The mantra, Ari's mantra was always, we build the road and the road builds us. And he asked me, would I please write a chapter for his ongoing autobiography? And I was going to call it How the Road Built Me. And then time went on and it turned into a whole book. So it's on Amazon. Joanna Macy's book is on Amazon. We can all read each other's books. With that, yes. So the permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the United Nations is now with us. And I would like to call on him to share his reflections of Ari. Mr. Ambassador, if you could unmute and speak up.
Thank you for giving me the floor. May I take this opportunity to thank Sarvodaya USA for inviting me to participate in this solemn gathering to honor the memory of an extraordinary individual who embodies the ideals of humanity and of social service and peace advocacy. Let me seize upon this moment to reflect on the lasting impact he made on the Sri Lankan community during his lifetime. Although Dr. Ariyaratne may no longer be with us physically, his spirit persists within the hearts and minds of the countless individuals whose lives he touched. Through this remarkable achievement, the late Dr. Ahangamage Tudor Ariyaratne, as he was known, has forged a lasting legacy that will continue to inspire and guide those who follow in his footsteps in humanity's quest of a harmonious world, a world free of poverty. Humans as we are, it is, however, with a deep sense of sadness that we dedicate this moment to mark the passing of Dr. Ariyaratne on the 16th of April of this year. The story of his life, Chair, leaves us with one sure message. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will. And that is what he pursued in life, as I see it, in the establishment of the world-renowned Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. So permit me the indulgence to describe Dr. Ariyaratne as being a giant figure in the field of humanities and the social sciences who devoted his illustrious career to alleviate poverty and to promote and protect social harmony. Dr. Ariyaratne was sometimes referred to as the Mahatma of Sri Lanka, who helped foster peace and unity between the communities of Sri Lanka during the unfortunate crisis, which mercifully is behind us. We remember that he worked towards combating food shortages, public health issues, and improving housing for many villages affected by the conflict. It is therefore pertinent that I recall that the Sarvodaya movement, an awakening for all, started in multiple villages across the country with the intention of promoting the well-being of the poorest and the most vulnerable. We also recall the peaceful protests that he staged for peace, particularly during the civil conflict, which undoubtedly sent out a wake-up call. Friends, Dr. Ariyaratne, who was born in Unawatuna, Galle, in the south of Sri Lanka in 1931, schooled at Mahinda College, Galle, received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in economics from Vidyodaya University, and was subsequently a teacher at Nalanda College until 1972. Interestingly, it appears that in 1958, while on a field trip with a group of students, he witnessed the difficulties of the villages of Sri Lanka were undergoing, which sensitized him to begin a movement to alleviate their suffering. And it was this that led to the founding of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. The movement was founded on the philosophical principles as propounded by the Buddha: nonviolence, impermanence, and the Four Noble Truths. It appears, therefore, that he was far ahead of his time, as the movement's objectives were to bring about sustainable economic and social development, as we talk about it so commonly in the United Nations today, to underprivileged communities. Some examples being the provision of microfinance for small startups, promoting education through scholarship, vocational training, and by the improvement of infrastructure facilities. It is a matter of public knowledge that under his leadership, the Sarvodaya movement made a difference in the lives of countless citizens of our country. I would be doing complete justice by Dr. Ariyaratne if I was to describe him as a Sri Lankan par exemplar, or perhaps even an extraordinary global citizen who will certainly be missed by all of us in a world that is frantically looking for personalities of his stature. It is said that many are called, but a few are chosen. And the late Dr. Ariyaratne was one, just one of those chosen few. May I conclude and be permitted to convey the deepest condolences of course, the government, which has already done so, of Sri Lanka and the members of my mission at the United Nations, to Mrs. Ariyaratne, to Vinya, Charika, Sadiva, Nimna, Jeevan, and Dayat, and the rest of the family, with the assurance that the late Dr. Ariyaratne will live in our hearts and be remembered for his signal contribution to the upliftment of the underprivileged rural communities. We know he is now at peace, and it is now the turn of his successors to live life to the fullest and keep his legacy alive. Let me conclude with a Hebrew proverb. Let us say not in grief, he is no more, but in thankfulness that he was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. For our last speaker before we move to the future, Vinya has suggested that I call on a person who's been named several times here today, and that is Nita Ariyaratne. If you could unmute.
Dear friends, I would like to thank all of you for organizing this meeting. Dear friends, I would like to thank all of you for organizing this evening to remember Ari. This evening, I would like to first thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to listen to all good things of Dr. Ari. We miss him very much. I think he will be remembered by all young and old persons in Sri Lanka who knows his life. We miss him here, and at Sarvodaya, he had created a big vacuum without his presence in the complex and also in the villages. People will never forget him because he was so very loving person to not only to the family members, his children, but to the whole community. I would like to thank all friends of Sarvodaya in USA and other countries, and also Sarvodaya friends who visited for his last rites here in Sri Lanka, taking their time and energy to be here with us at the very sad event of his last rites. Again, I will appeal to you to help the movement to go forward and take his message to the needy people in Sri Lanka and in other countries. Lastly, I thank you for organizing this event today in memory of my beloved late husband, Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Okay, Bob, we're going to have Vinya's slides now. And Vinya is going to let us, as president of Sarvodaya, he is going to share with us where Sarvodaya is going and heading, as it says on the screen, the way forward. Is there a way to spotlight Vinya also at the same time? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, John. Most Venerable Katugastota Uparatana Naikatero and Bhikkhu Bodhi and all the other religious leaders who are joining us online. His Excellency Mahinda Samarasinghe and His Excellency Dr. Mohan Piris, who are joining us today at this solemn occasion. Dr. John Coonrod and all the board members of Sarvodaya USA and all the friends and family, the larger family of Sarvodaya who are joining this event today. I was asked by John to give an overview of where Sarvodaya is now and some of our priorities for the next phase of Sarvodaya. So I titled my presentation Sarvodaya, the way forward. But before I do that, let me, it's my duty to also thank all of you for the, profound, it's with profound gratitude that I acknowledge the condolences and all the messages that were sent by all of you from all over the world, and also your unwavering support and the comforting presence and kind words that have been a source of immense solace and strength during this time of profound loss for our family and the larger Sarvodaya family. So when you look at the way forward of Sarvodaya, Sarvodaya movement is now 65 years old. When my father started it in 1958, he was only 29 years old, a teacher at Nalanda College, which is a Buddhist high school. Not moving. So the philosophy, I think, have been already reminded by several previous speakers. So Sarvodaya means awakening of all.
Next slide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So he defined development as an awakening process taking place within individuals, families, communities, nation as a whole, and the whole world. And spiritual dimension still remains to be at the core of Sarvodaya work. And the Buddhist teachings formed a central part of course, Sarvodaya's teachings, as Venerable referred to, Satara Brahma Viharana, or, the four sublime abodes that we all adhere to as Buddhists, but extending beyond our Buddhist traditions, he was able to bring together communities to work together for the common good of all. So this movement, was on one hand, his vision was very practical, though it was very deep, it was very practical. So those communities who picked up that vision was supported by the infrastructure that he built over the first 1.5 decades of the movement. And then, as it was referred to earlier by John, and also his book is titled based on this motto, we build the road builds us. And as children, we also grew up in the 1960s, going to villages, going to Shramadana camps, and really seeing the reality of our villages and how scientifically this transformation was taking place. Later in our lives, we realized when we really studied development, and also in my case, medicine and public health. So actually this model of development, which he really evolved through practice, remained to be the main strategy of Sarvodaya, that is transformation of communities, first starting with what we call the psychological infrastructure building, and then gradually strengthening the village's own capacity, not to be dependent on external assistance, but to be able to empower themselves to take decisions and to take responsibility to develop. and then build on the economic dimension that affect their lives, income and enterprise development services and so on, but based on a community-based organization, which is really the future that we are looking at now in terms of building the social, economic, and even political development at a decentralized level. So there are 38,000 villages in Sri Lanka. Over a period of 65 years, Sarvodaya has reached more than 1/3, or between 1/3 and 2/3 of villages. That's about 15,000 communities in Sri Lanka. And in about 5,400 villages, we have these legally independent village societies, which are incorporated under the Societies Ordinance of Sri Lanka. And that is the foundation on which this entire transformation is taking place. And the most important thing that my father and the Sarvodaya movement did was to shift the conventional development paradigm, which was based on satisfying physical needs, to really developing a social asset, social capital in the community. So usually financial capital is the one that people recognize as capital development, but he articulated that it's as important or even more important to have spiritual capital and social capital. So this remains the biggest asset of the organization. And to support this, I'm going to present here just in a graphic form. To support this 5-stage development process, we have an infrastructure, a support system consisting of different specialized units in Sarvodaya, and which are available to the communities at a very decentralized level. And this infrastructure will continue, although we have made certain changes over the years, because earlier transportation and all these facilities were not like what you experience today, what you have today. So we had to also rationalize, because the organization itself is becoming less and less dependent on external donors. So that transformation has started about 20 years ago. Now it's continuing. And we are very happy that we were able to have a global outreach as well. We have many individuals who are connected through the Sarvodaya philosophy, who also believe in this type of philosophy. And His Excellency Mohan Pir is referred to the Sustainable Development Goals. All these modern development concepts are very much in line with the original philosophy and practice that my father and Sarvodaya has been articulating for more than 65 years. So we have networks that we are connected to, and also at a global level, international universities. We have Professor Matthew here, and likewise we host students from all over the world, particularly from United States, whose world view is being broadened by the experience that they get in visiting our work in Sri Lanka. So over the years, Sarvodaya has built an organizational infrastructure which consists of village level societies, as I have referred to earlier, and also legally independent units which are specializing in different parts of different aspects related to development. So we have starting with the village societies to our Sarvodaya Women's Movement, Sarvodaya Youth Wing, Peace Co, and also a highly sophisticated technology based empowerment programs like Sarvodaya Fusion, which is introducing the use of information communication technology to the communities and so on. So it's a movement which has many different organizations which are connected to each other. It's a movement. It's still a movement, but it inspires individuals, but also connected organizationally at a national level. So when you look at the growth of Sarvodaya, as it was referred to earlier, it wasn't, my father and the movement faced enormous challenges. It started as a grassroots movement based on a certain philosophy and was supported by people, individuals and organizations who believed in the vision. There was no sort of bidding for donor funding at that time. It was a very different era. Then there was a technical growth with Sarvodaya being supported by a consortium of donors. And then we realized that there were limitations in this model. And then my father decided, no, we need to go back to our roots and try to really be independent of donor funding. So in 1998, with the 40th anniversary of Sarvodaya, we tried to revert to the volunteer base and tried to achieve organizational sustainability. Even at that time, we had certain enterprises like village products being exported to the world market, and we had educational toys being manufactured in Sri Lanka. All those things were there, but then we had to take it to another level. And in a changing socio-economic environment, and with the war which was still there during this period, we had to really change our strategies to survive and continue the service that we were doing. So when we were able to somehow bring together these different new programs together, and also finding new avenues of sustaining the organization, when we reached our 60th anniversary in 2018, by that time the war has been concluded, and we had to really look at how we give hope, particularly to the younger generation of our country, and create more opportunities so that there will be some degree of hope for the future for the country, and bringing all different communities together. So when the economic crisis was followed by the COVID crisis, we defined our path as what my father coined this term, Artha Dharma. Artha is economics, or economics and also meaningful. Dharma is, of course, values and doctrine. So here we are trying to reframe the Sarvodaya path based on this Artha Dharma concept of my father. It's a transformational journey towards building a new nation. So here, just to remind, I'll take few minutes only to remind the last 5 years what we have been going through. So during the pre-COVID period, of course, we know what the situation of the country was, and we were concentrating on integrated community development. And then before the COVID-19 hit Sri Lanka, we had still poverty, and there were a lot of disparities in terms of the income poverty in Sri Lanka. And if you look at not just the income poverty, but you look at what you call the multidimensional poverty, it was even higher. So as a national organization, a social movement, we had to look at programming to meet the needs of the most vulnerable communities. So this was before COVID-19, and when COVID-19 hit, it really disrupted the entire the social fabric, as we all know. And particularly as an organization which is focusing on health and well-being of children, we could not stand this trend of worsening nutritional status of our children. And you could see the impact on children in terms of education, not just health, but psychosocial development as well. So we came up with this program called Sarvodaya, Awakening of Health, to address the needs during the COVID-19 period. So it had 5 different components. We were working very closely with the government, contributing to the national response. Then we also had preparedness through community empowerment, and also emergency relief, because there was a large number of people who could not access even satisfy their basic needs. And we had to also, as a humanitarian organization, adjust to what you call the new normal, and then start the process of recovery even while the pandemic was continuing. So we had a very comprehensive program. We partnered with the government and UN agencies and contributed to the national response. Then we, being a organization which was based on spiritual values, we tried to use the teachings of our different religions to convey the message. And we know that there had been in Sri Lanka certain unusual challenges, like some communities being stigmatized as being, promoting or spreading the disease. And then because of the context in which COVID-19 took place, particularly in 2019, we had the Easter Sunday bombing, and there were a lot of tensions between certain groups of communities in Sri Lanka. So we tried to address that also during that period. So from relief services to setting up intermediate care centers for COVID affected patients, to promoting vaccination, and then also really educating the community leaders on how to not just address this particular crisis, but how can they be prepared for future disasters, future pandemics. So a COVID ready village was a concept that we came up with, and then with the village communities, we were able to really protect Sarvodaya villages in terms of having the COVID-19 spreading in those areas. So then after, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic was over, then the economic crisis hit Sri Lanka. So during the economic crisis, we know that it was a multidimensional crisis, and the main problem was food insecurity and the loss of livelihoods, and also humanitarian needs were insurmountable, and we could not even raise enough resources to address the needs of 6.3 million Sri Lankans who were not receiving the minimum level of nutrition that they required. So we tried to focus on the priority areas, and there were, if you look at this chart, some districts were not affected as badly. So we selected about 6 districts in Sri Lanka and focused on these districts. And I like to take this opportunity to thank Bhikkhu Bodhi and the Buddhist Global Relief and some of the other partners, development partners present here, Asia Foundation, who supported us in this crisis situation. And Sarvodaya USA played a pivotal role in mobilizing resources in these areas to support these areas. So there were 3 components in this campaign. It was called We Are One. It's a national initiative that was enabling the people to dispel hunger, and also it had these components: community kitchen, food bank, and home gardening, an integrated program. So it was not to make people dependent on external aid, it's just to survive during that very difficult period. And then these community kitchens were really, there was a huge community contribution as well. It was not just the food that we were, dry rations and other things that we were providing to these more than 110 preschools in those most affected areas, but also the community brought their own resources. And then these community food banks was a novel concept where people who had surplus, even poor people, they came and deposited these things and took whatever they needed. So it was a unique thing, and some of these food banks are still continuing today because we are still not recovered fully from the economic crisis. Then home gardening, Sri Lanka is a country blessed with so much good soil, good environment, water, and we can still meet some of our food needs at a household level. So we were promoting home gardening in a very scientific way. And our support base was, of course, if you really calculate the amount of volunteer efforts and the community contributions, it's enormous. So it remains to be, we remain to be a voluntary organization mobilizing a lot of local resources. Then there are individual donors, then institutional donors. And for the first time, we are also partnering with corporates who are following ethical principles. So we were able to mobilize a large amount of additional resources. So from here, where are we going? Last year, we saw that there were 4 million people who became newly poor in Sri Lanka. Those are those whom we call new poor. And we have seen poverty increasing across all 9 provinces in Sri Lanka. And many households reduce their food. The adults reduce their food consumption or reduce the number of meals that they were taking to feed the children. So this was the situation, and we had to think long term now. How can we now move away from this emergency phase into more sustainable development, and particularly looking at the economic dimension as well, because a large percentage of the most disadvantaged communities became even more indebted to banks. They had to sell their assets. So how can we as Sarvodaya address this social and economic problem together? And that's where we came up with this new initiative, Artha Dharma, which was launched in 2023 with my father, and he also gave a lot of advice to formulate this program. And it's really looking at a revived Sri Lanka, how can we reimagine our future? So the main elements, it's a national initiative which introduces a transformative approach to years of toil and successes. Challenges also we face. We are learning from our experience and mistakes as well. And it's a program which touches on 3 different aspects, which is also, it's nothing new, but we are articulating it as a new platform. It's a national initiative where we partner with other organizations as well. There's an economic dimension, social dimension, and governance. Economic, we know that food security is very important. So we are giving priority to agriculture. Then trade means really providing markets for village products. There's a lot of potential for us to produce agriculture and non-agriculture related products. And now we have information communication technology, which can connect the village communities to international markets. But our aim is not to contribute to the export economy of Sri Lanka. Of course, Ambassador knows that there are a lot of promotion going on to invest in Sri Lanka for export and, trade. But we want food security be first ensured to our people. So for that, we are partnering with many organizations to see how we can enhance the productivity, rural agricultural productivity. And then entrepreneurship and youth empowerment. I'll come to that. I'll select a few and then describe and I'll conclude my presentation. So when it comes to the youth empowerment, we know that there was a uprising, and which was led by youth in Sri Lanka in 2022. So if you really look at deeply, Sri Lanka's unemployment rate is single digit. Actually, it's I think similar to United States. It's 4.5, the unemployment rate. But if you look at the youth unemployment rate in Sri Lanka, right? Youth represent about 23% of Sri Lanka's population, or 4.7 million of the population are between age 16 and 29. And if you look at that working age population of youth, it's very high, 30% for the age group 15 to 24 and 9.2% for the 25 to 29 group. And it's totally unacceptable. And these are the youth who have no trust in our system. They think that our opportunities are abroad. So we want to create more opportunities for youth, young people in Sri Lanka. And modern agriculture is one area that we are very serious to promote. And we believe that we can protect our youth from all these problems the youth of Sri Lanka are facing: smoking, alcohol, substance abuse, violence, mental health issues, suicide, sexual and reproductive health issues. So Sarvodaya already has a portfolio of activities that address these issues. And we also want to use the information communication technology and in an effective way. And we have a program which is supported by big corporates like Meta, Facebook, Microsoft. So we have partnerships, and it's called Sarvodaya Fusion, and we are providing opportunities for education for youth who are otherwise unable to access because of the cost, these types of high standard information communication technology training or education. So let me conclude by touching on the other important aspect that Sarvodaya is now involved in. It's towards creating a new economic order. It's again based on the Buddhist philosophy, where we believe that you should only spend 1/4 of your income on your consumption. 2 portions should be left for savings or investments, and 1 portion should be kept for an emergency. So this Singalova Sutra in our Buddhist teachings. And based on this philosophy, my father 40 years ago created a program called Sarvodaya Economic Enterprise Development Service, which has now become the Sarvodaya Development Finance, a central bank regulated finance company. And this finance company is very unique. Only one in Sri Lanka, where the majority shareholding, 54.6%, is owned by the main Sarvodaya organization, which is an approved charity, and also the village level society. So 1,279 village societies have ownership. They have invested in this company, which is providing them also low interest loans, and also enterprise development advice, incubation support, all that. So this is a unique organization which is now trying to position itself in the macroeconomy to provide new opportunities for youth, and particularly the women in Sri Lanka, because women unemployment within the youth unemployment is disproportionately high in Sri Lanka. If you look at the portfolio of Sarvodaya Development Finance, more than 80% is outside the Western Province. Some of you are familiar, Western Province is where the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, and Kalutara, and Honorable Mahinda Samarasinghe come from the Kalutara district. And but that's considered somewhat privileged district in terms of services. But the Sarvodaya Development Finance provides more than 80% of the portfolio is to those areas. Then if you look at the agriculture portfolio, it's very high, 40%, and that is why how we are reflecting or positioning ourselves to the needs of the country. So I'll finish with that, because Sarvodaya USA is the main partner in this program with the government of Sri Lanka. It's called the Inclusive Digital Agriculture Transformation Project in Sri Lanka, which is supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Sarvodaya is the intermediary organization which is coordinating. There are 7 government ministries involved in this, led by Agriculture Ministry, because in Sri Lanka, agriculture sector is represented by 7 different ministries, including Mahaveli and irrigation. And so we are supporting the government, and this is led by the Presidential Secretariat, to bring a digital platform for decision making, easy decision making by the government, but ultimately aimed at smallholder farmers. So with this project, we are providing a technology-based solutions. Some are also trying to pilot expansion of some startups which have proved really effective in addressing some of the problems in the agriculture sector. As you know, we have a huge amount of big percentage of harvest is lost post-harvest in transport, storage, and so on. So we try to address that and many other problems associated with pesticide use and also inorganic fertilizer. So we are trying, this is a groundbreaking project and managed through the Sarvodaya USA. And finally, about leadership. So we have a distributed leadership. That's what my father has been promoting. So it's multi-generational. You can see 3 generations. Unfortunately, some of these individuals are no longer with us. But I use this as my last slide to show that we have at least 4 generations who will continue this mission. And the only 1,500 are full-time workers, but we have hundreds and thousands of volunteers who are connected in some way to Sarvodaya work, starting with preschool teachers in the villages, the society officials, the volunteers who are trained for disaster management. Right now, as I speak, 7 districts in Sri Lanka are underwater, and our volunteers who have been trained in rescue operations are working very closely with the Disaster Management Center of the government, and also providing food and other things to people who are displaced now. Right now, there are even internally displaced camps in Sri Lanka, in temples where people had to leave their homes because of the floods. So these are the types of leadership that we have developed. So it's, I know it's a difficult transition, but because my father had invested in the next generations from the time he started the movement, I think you all can be assured that the mission that my father started will continue. And also you all are part of that mission. And that's why you are here today, and also in person and online. So together we will build the kind of world that he envisioned to build. And it all starts from the individual. So let's continue our individual personal transformation to transform the communities and the world. So let me thank all of you and our venerable, most venerable Katugastota Uparatana Thero and our Bhikkhu Bodhi and all the other religious leaders, and Honorable Mahinda Samarasinghe, Honorable Dr. Mohan Piris, and all the distinguished guests who are here, and my family, as well as the Sarvodaya friends from all over the world who have joined today. So I conclude by saying that we all will continue the mission of late Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne, and together we firmly believe that we can build a better world. Thank you.
So thank you all for your psychological, social, and financial support of Sarvodaya. If you're not currently one of our regular financial supporters, you can just go to sarvodayausa.org and click the Donate Now button. We would love to give you that kind of partnership. We have outside refreshments. Everyone is so wonderfully here. So we're now going to conclude, but please, we have time to chat and talk, and there's juice and tea and coffee and snacks right out in this hallway here. There are restrooms when you go out, go that way. So we'll continue this conversation, but I really want to thank Vinya for putting together such a big fire hose of presentation on the enormity of the work in Sri Lanka today. And I just wanted to share one more picture because I always share this picture with everybody I know. So this picture is of some of the other social development champions around the world who participated at the International Community Leadership Project in 1983, I believe. And it was a wonderful, but you know, as I've read more books about many of these people and all of the leaders who were there from Latin America, from Africa, many of them traveled to Sri Lanka after spending time with Ari. They really learned a lot and they shared a lot. So the opportunity to actually bring community leaders together and to have them strengthen each other has just been miraculous over the years. My colleague Gunjan and I work with a whole network here where we're trying to promote a lot more of that happening. So you can chat her up while you're getting refreshments. Our board, some of whom are here, is meeting tomorrow. So we will take your good wishes and support and love and try and meet with Vinya and figure out how to make even more of all this happen. So please thank you for your love and support and presence here today. And that goes to all of you who are online, big number of people online, more than 77 connections, and many of them I could see in the windows had multiple people sitting there. So thank you all for joining us today, and we'll keep you informed. Venerable Sir, thank you. Thank you, Ambassador.